She was a quiet girl who loved spending time near the piano. From the first day she could reach the keys, she found joy in the sound that came from her small fingers pressing them. Her home was full of old music sheets and recordings that her parents had collected over the years. Most children her age were running around outside, playing games or watching cartoons, but she would sit by the piano for hours, her eyes following the notes on the sheet music even if she did not understand all of them. She did not know it yet, but she was different from other children in the way she felt music. Every note spoke to her. Every rhythm made her heart beat in a new way. Her first teacher noticed that she had a sense for timing that was unusual for someone so young. While other students struggled with simple scales and rhythms, she seemed to pick them up naturally. It was not just memorization. She listened to the music and felt it inside herself, as if she had known it all her life. Her teachers often exchanged looks of surprise when she played something they had only explained a few moments before. It was not perfect, but it had life and emotion, something that many advanced players struggled to capture. At home, she spent time exploring the piano on her own. She would press keys at random and sometimes create beautiful melodies without realizing it. Her parents tried to encourage her to take formal lessons, but they were careful not to push too hard. They knew she had a gift, but they wanted her love for music to grow naturally. Sometimes she would fall asleep at the piano, her small hands resting on the keys, a soft melody floating in the air. These moments felt magical to her family, and they started to understand that she was not an ordinary child. When she began school, her teachers quickly noticed her talent. She joined the music class, and while the other children struggled to learn simple pieces, she seemed to have an innate understanding of rhythm and melody. During a lesson, the teacher asked the class to play a simple song. She looked at the sheet music and, without hesitation, played it perfectly. The teacher was astonished, not just at her skill but at the confidence she displayed while playing. Other students looked at her with a mix of curiosity and envy. They could not understand how she seemed to know what to do instinctively. Despite her talent, she remained humble. She did not boast or seek attention. She was more interested in discovering new sounds and creating music that made her happy. Her favorite part was experimenting with melodies, trying different combinations of notes to see what feelings they could bring out. Sometimes she would play loudly, letting the room fill with sound, and other times softly, almost whispering the music. The piano became her world, a place where she could express herself in ways words could not. One afternoon, the school announced a music recital. All students were expected to perform a piece they had been practicing. She felt both excitement and nervousness. She had never performed in front of such a large audience, but she wanted to try. For weeks, she practiced diligently, her fingers dancing over the keys. She experimented with small changes to the tempo and dynamics, trying to make the piece her own. She was determined not just to play the notes correctly, but to make the music feel alive. The day of the recital arrived, and the auditorium was filled with parents, teachers, and students. She sat at the piano, feeling her heart race, but as soon as her fingers touched the keys, she felt calm. The music flowed from her as if it had been waiting inside her all along. The audience was silent, captivated by the sound. She did not just play the notes. She told a story with each phrase, conveying joy, sadness, and hope in ways that touched everyone who listened. After she finished, there was a pause, and then the applause erupted. People were amazed that someone so young could play with such emotion and skill. Her teacher approached her, eyes wide with admiration, and said, "You have something very special. Keep practicing and exploring music, because you have a gift that is rare." She smiled quietly, feeling proud but also eager to continue learning. She knew that this was only the beginning of her journey. Back at home, she reflected on the experience. She realized that music was not just something she played. It was a part of her. She wanted to understand it more deeply, to learn the pieces that seemed impossible and to challenge herself in ways she had not imagined. She began to listen to recordings of famous pianists, trying to understand how they expressed emotion through their playing. She studied the techniques, the movements of the hands, and the subtle variations in rhythm and dynamics. She wanted to grow, not just as a player, but as someone who could communicate through music. Her parents noticed how serious she had become about her practice, but they also saw her happiness. She would spend hours at the piano, sometimes laughing when she discovered a new melody, sometimes frowning in concentration when a passage was difficult. She learned the value of patience and persistence, understanding that mastery required both. She also learned to listen carefully, not just to herself, but to the music and to the world around her. At school, her reputation as a talented pianist began to spread. Other teachers and students were curious about her abilities. Some were inspired, trying harder in their own lessons, while others watched quietly, not fully understanding how she could play with such skill. She remained focused on her own growth, not letting attention distract her from her love for the piano. She knew that talent was important, but passion and dedication were what truly allowed her to reach new heights. Her teacher began to give her slightly more challenging pieces, testing her limits and encouraging her to develop her skills further. She would practice late into the evening, learning to read the notes more quickly, to move her fingers with precision, and to express emotion in every phrase. Each day brought new challenges, but also new discoveries. She began to understand that music was a language, and the piano was her way of speaking it to the world. By the end of the first year at her new level of lessons, she had grown tremendously. She could play complex pieces with confidence and emotion. Yet, she remained the same quiet girl who loved discovering new sounds. She had not changed her love for music, only deepened it. Her teachers started to realize that she was not just talented. She had a rare gift that could take her far if nurtured properly. One afternoon, after a lesson, her teacher said, "I think it is time to see what you can do with something truly difficult. There is a piece that even many advanced students struggle to play. I want you to try it." She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had never faced something that seemed impossible before, but she was not afraid. She had learned that the joy of music came not just from playing what was easy, but from challenging herself and discovering new possibilities. She nodded, ready to take on the next step in her journey. Little did she know, this would be the moment that revealed her true potential. The piece she was about to tackle would test her skills, her patience, and her understanding of music like never before. But it would also be the moment that teachers and everyone around her would discover that she was not just a talented student, but a true piano prodigy. Her journey was only beginning, and the piano would continue to be the path that led her to extraordinary achievements. She felt a thrill of anticipation and a quiet confidence that she could meet the challenge. This was her world, and she was ready to explore it fully. The day had arrived when the teachers presented her with the piece they believed was far beyond her ability. It was a composition famous for its complexity, with notes that danced rapidly across the keyboard and rhythms that twisted unexpectedly. Even students years older and more experienced had struggled to play it perfectly. She stared at the sheet music, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. The challenge was intimidating, but it also called to something inside her that loved to discover the impossible. She sat at the piano and looked carefully at the notes. At first, they seemed like a blur, a tangle of black and white that her fingers could never navigate. She knew she had to start slowly, learning the patterns and understanding the structure of the music. Her teacher watched quietly, unsure what to expect. Other students gathered around, curious to see if she could even make it through the first few measures. Her first attempts were clumsy. Fingers stumbled over notes, hands moved in the wrong direction, and the rhythm was off. The music sounded fragmented, not flowing as it should. She felt frustration bubble inside her, but she did not give up. She paused, took a deep breath, and began again. This time, she focused on small sections, breaking the piece into manageable parts. Slowly, she started to recognize the patterns, the ways the hands should move, and the timing between each note. It was difficult work, and it required patience, but she found herself enjoying the process. Each small success felt like a victory. Each correctly played phrase brought a sense of accomplishment. Her teachers observed carefully, seeing glimpses of her potential even in the mistakes. There was a natural precision to her fingers, a quick understanding of how the notes connected, and an unusual ability to remember patterns. It became clear that she was not just trying to play the piece. She was learning it in a deeper way, feeling the music in her body as well as with her ears. She began to experiment with small changes in tempo and dynamics, trying to understand how each note contributed to the emotion of the piece. Even when she made errors, she quickly corrected herself, showing an intuition that was beyond what anyone expected for her age. Days turned into weeks. She practiced relentlessly, sometimes for hours at a stretch. Her parents watched quietly, amazed at her dedication. She did not complain or ask for breaks. Her mind was focused entirely on the piano. Sometimes she would stop, frown at a section that seemed impossible, and then start again with renewed determination. Her teacher encouraged her to be patient, reminding her that mastery took time, but she was already showing signs of extraordinary ability. She could learn difficult passages faster than most students, and she began to play longer sections without mistakes. Her confidence grew with each successful practice. One afternoon, while she was practicing a particularly difficult section, something changed. Her hands moved with a flow she had not experienced before, and the music began to sound natural and alive. She played the section over and over, each time with more clarity and expression. Her teacher's eyes widened in surprise, realizing that she had not just learned the notes. She had begun to understand the soul of the piece. The complexity that had once seemed impossible now became a challenge she could navigate with skill and emotion. Her friends at school started noticing her progress. They would listen quietly when she practiced, amazed at the sounds she produced. Some whispered among themselves, wondering how a student so young could play such difficult music with ease. Others were inspired, trying harder in their own lessons, encouraged by her determination and growth. She did not seek attention, but the recognition came naturally. People could not ignore the way she transformed challenging notes into something beautiful. As the days passed, her ability to play the piece improved dramatically. She learned to control her tempo, to add subtle changes in volume, and to bring out the emotion hidden in the music. Her fingers moved with precision, and she could anticipate the changes before they occurred. Her teacher began to introduce small variations and exercises to help her further refine her technique. She embraced these challenges, understanding that each one was a step toward mastery. One evening, after a long day of practice, she sat quietly by the piano, reflecting on her journey. She realized that the piece was no longer intimidating. What had once seemed impossible was now a puzzle she could solve, a story she could tell. She felt a sense of pride, not from showing off her talent, but from knowing that her hard work and dedication were paying off. The music had become a part of her, a way to express feelings that words could never capture. She smiled, knowing that she had grown not only as a pianist, but as someone who could understand and communicate through music. Her teacher decided it was time to hear her play the piece in front of an audience. It was not a formal recital, but a small gathering of students and teachers who wanted to see her progress. She felt nervous at first, but as she sat at the piano, the familiar feeling of the keys beneath her fingers brought a sense of calm. She began to play carefully at first and then with growing confidence. The music flowed from her naturally, each note connecting to the next, each phrase expressing emotion and life. The audience was captivated. Even the teachers who had doubted her ability were astonished. She played with a skill and understanding that far exceeded her age. Her fingers moved with speed and precision, but there was also a softness, a sensitivity that made the music come alive. People whispered in amazement, realizing that this was no ordinary student. She had taken on a challenge that seemed impossible and had transformed it into something extraordinary. After she finished, the room was silent for a moment, and then the applause erupted. Her teacher approached, smiling broadly, and said, "I knew you had talent, but this is remarkable. You have not just learned the piece. You have understood it in a way that few can. You are a true musician." She blushed quietly, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. She knew that there was still much to learn, but she had proven to herself and to others that she could meet any challenge with determination and heart. In the days that followed, she continued to practice and explore the piece. She experimented with different interpretations, learning to express a wider range of emotion through her playing. She listened to recordings of famous pianists who had performed the same composition, studying their techniques and approaches. She began to understand that each pianist brought something unique to the music, and she wanted to find her own voice. Her teachers encouraged this exploration, realizing that her potential was not limited to simply playing notes correctly, but in creating music that could move people. Her confidence grew, but so did her humility. She understood that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, practice, and a love for music were equally important. She continued to push herself, taking on pieces that challenged her further and experimenting with techniques that required patience and focus. Each day brought new discoveries, new challenges, and new joys. She found herself thinking about music constantly, noticing rhythms and melodies in everyday life and imagining how they could be translated to the piano. By the end of this chapter in her life, she had not only learned to play the impossible piece but had begun to make it her own. Her teachers and peers recognized her as something extraordinary, but she remained focused on the journey rather than the recognition. The piano was her companion, her teacher, and her way of communicating with the world. She had taken on a challenge that seemed beyond her ability and had turned it into an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to discover the depth of her talent. The experience showed her that what may seem impossible at first can become achievable with determination, patience, and love for what you do. The journey was far from over. She knew there were more challenges ahead, more difficult pieces to learn, and more opportunities to grow. But she faced them with courage and excitement, knowing that each new challenge was a chance to understand herself and her music even better. This experience had shown her and everyone around her that talent, when nurtured with dedication and passion, could achieve extraordinary things. She looked at the sheet music once more, a smile playing on her lips, ready to take on the next step of her musical journey. After mastering the previously impossible piece, she felt a new sense of confidence. The piano no longer seemed intimidating. It had become a space where she could explore freely, where every note offered a chance to create something unique. Her teachers watched with awe as she began experimenting with variations, adding subtle nuances to the music that made it her own. She was not just playing. She was interpreting, expressing emotions in ways that made listeners feel something profound. Even the simplest melodies she touched seemed to gain depth, as if her fingers could uncover hidden feelings embedded in the music. Her reputation as a gifted pianist began to grow. Word spread through the school about her extraordinary skill, and soon other teachers wanted to hear her play. Some came with skepticism, expecting a talented student who could play well but lacked true understanding. They were quickly proven wrong. As she played, her music communicated emotion, structure, and intelligence all at once. It was clear that she had an instinctive connection with the piano that went beyond technique. People listened, mesmerized, noticing how she could take even the most difficult passages and make them sound natural and expressive. Encouraged by her teachers, she started learning more advanced pieces. These compositions were known for their complexity, full of rapid passages, wide leaps, and intricate rhythms. Each piece was a new challenge, pushing her to develop both precision and emotional expression. She practiced tirelessly, learning to break down the music into smaller sections, understanding the structure, and memorizing patterns. It was demanding work, but she loved every moment. She was discovering that the process of mastering a piece could be as rewarding as performing it perfectly. One day, her teacher introduced a particularly famous composition, known as a benchmark for young pianists. It had been played by many skilled musicians, yet few could truly interpret it with depth. She stared at the sheet music, her heart racing. The notes seemed overwhelming at first, a tangle of complexity that challenged every skill she had learned so far. But instead of fear, she felt excitement. She wanted to understand it, to unravel its mysteries and make it hers. She began slowly, playing small sections and repeating them until her fingers knew the movements instinctively. She listened carefully to the sound, noting how each phrase should flow, where the dynamics should rise and fall, and how to bring emotion into each passage. Mistakes happened, of course, but she treated them as part of the learning process. Every error was an opportunity to improve, to discover a better way to express the music. Her teachers admired her dedication and resilience, realizing that her talent was matched by her determination to grow. As she progressed, she started experimenting with interpretations. She tried different tempos, phrasing, and dynamics, listening to how each variation affected the mood of the music. Sometimes, she played softly, almost whispering the notes, and other times she let the sound fill the room with power and intensity. Her understanding of music deepened, and she began to see the piano not just as an instrument, but as a language she could use to communicate her feelings. She realized that every performance was an opportunity to share a story, to connect with anyone listening on a deeper level. Her practice sessions became more structured. She divided her time between technical exercises, learning new pieces, and experimenting with interpretations. She learned to analyze music, understanding the composer's intentions and the emotions behind each phrase. She also began to develop her own style, blending her natural instincts with techniques she had studied from recordings of famous pianists. This balance between disciplined study and personal creativity allowed her to play with both precision and soul. The teachers noticed that she was beginning to think like a professional musician. She could identify challenges in a piece before she played them, planning strategies to overcome them. She could also improvise, taking a simple melody and transforming it with variations that revealed her understanding of harmony, rhythm, and emotion. Her performances were no longer just displays of technical skill. They became expressive experiences that could captivate any listener. People were drawn to her music, sensing the depth of feeling and the intelligence behind each note. During school recitals, her talent became even more apparent. Students and teachers gathered to hear her play, curious about what she would bring to the stage next. She chose pieces that were challenging and expressive, demonstrating not just skill but maturity in her musicality. Her performances were met with admiration and applause, but she remained humble. She was focused not on recognition but on the joy of music itself. Each recital was an opportunity to share what she had learned, to connect with the audience, and to continue her own growth. Her parents observed her transformation with pride and amazement. They saw how music had become a central part of her life, shaping her character and her understanding of the world. They also noticed her growing independence and confidence. She was learning to tackle challenges on her own, to analyze problems, and to find solutions through practice and creativity. Music was teaching her lessons that extended beyond the piano, helping her develop patience, focus, and resilience. One afternoon, her teacher suggested a new approach. Instead of only practicing structured pieces, she should also try creating her own music. She hesitated at first, unsure if she could compose something meaningful. But with encouragement, she began experimenting, putting her feelings into melodies and harmonies. She discovered that composing was different from performing. It required imagination and an understanding of how different notes could interact. She loved the freedom it offered, the ability to create something entirely her own, and she quickly became absorbed in this new form of musical exploration. Her compositions were simple at first, small fragments of melodies that expressed a single emotion or idea. But as she practiced, they became more complex, incorporating different rhythms, harmonies, and textures. She played her pieces for her teachers, who were astonished by her creativity and sensitivity. They encouraged her to continue, helping her refine her ideas and offering guidance on structure and technique. Through composing, she developed a deeper understanding of music and her own abilities, discovering that her talent extended beyond playing to the very creation of sound. Her peers began to recognize her as more than just a skilled pianist. They saw her as a young musician with insight, creativity, and passion. Some sought her advice, curious about how she approached practice and interpretation. Others simply listened, inspired by her dedication and the beauty of her music. She became a quiet source of motivation, showing that hard work, curiosity, and love for what you do could lead to remarkable results. The experience of tackling challenging pieces, experimenting with interpretation, and composing her own music had transformed her. She no longer viewed music as a set of notes to be memorized but as a living language, full of emotion, meaning, and possibilities. She felt empowered, knowing that she could explore this world with skill, creativity, and confidence. Each day at the piano brought new discoveries, new challenges, and new joys, and she embraced them all with curiosity and determination. By the end of this chapter in her journey, she had grown into a young musician with depth and insight beyond her years. Her teachers began to realize that she was no longer just a talented student. She was a prodigy in the making. The foundation she had built through practice, exploration, and creativity had prepared her for the next stage of her growth, where her skills and passion would be recognized more broadly. Her journey was still unfolding, but it was clear that she had extraordinary potential, and the piano was the path that would allow her to reach it. She looked at the music she had been working on, a sense of excitement and anticipation filling her. There were still pieces that seemed impossible, challenges that would test her further, and opportunities to express herself in ways she had not yet imagined. But she faced them with courage and determination, confident in her abilities and her love for music. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a companion, a teacher, and a means of self-expression. And with each note she played, she continued to grow, discovering the depth of her talent and the beauty of the music within her. After months of mastering difficult pieces and experimenting with her own compositions, the teachers began to understand the depth of her talent. They realized she was not just a gifted student but a young pianist with extraordinary potential. They decided it was time to nurture her gift more formally and expose her to opportunities that could truly develop her skills. They arranged advanced lessons with highly skilled mentors who specialized in working with prodigies, hoping to help her refine her technique and deepen her understanding of music. The first meeting with her new mentor was both exciting and intimidating. The mentor had years of experience, and the pieces he suggested were far more complex than anything she had tackled before. At first, the challenges seemed overwhelming, with rapid passages, wide leaps, and intricate harmonies that demanded focus and precision. She felt a mix of nervousness and thrill, understanding that these pieces would push her limits in ways she had not yet experienced. She knew she could rise to the occasion, but it would require determination and careful practice. Her mentor guided her through new techniques, teaching her how to play with both speed and clarity, to balance both hands in complex passages, and to bring out the emotion behind every note. The lessons were intense and sometimes frustrating. There were moments when she stumbled, struggling to master a section or maintain the tempo. But her love for the piano and her determination to improve never wavered. Each mistake became a lesson, and each small success fueled her drive to continue. As she progressed, she began to participate in local competitions and performances. Her first appearances were nerve-wracking, standing before an audience larger than she was used to. But as soon as her fingers touched the keys, she felt a sense of calm. Music had become a part of her, and she could express herself naturally, even under pressure. Her performances impressed judges and audience members alike. People were astonished that someone so young could play with such skill, confidence, and emotional depth. The applause and admiration were gratifying, but more than that, she felt proud of how far she had come and eager to continue growing. Her parents and teachers watched her development with pride. They noticed how she balanced discipline with creativity, technique with expression. She had learned that talent alone was not enough. It was the combination of skill, practice, and passion that allowed her to truly excel. They also saw her humility and love for music, which remained the core of her motivation. She was not performing for recognition or praise. She played because it was an essential part of who she was. Her reputation continued to grow, and soon she was invited to special workshops and masterclasses with renowned pianists. These experiences opened her eyes to new styles, techniques, and interpretations. She learned to approach music from different perspectives, understanding that every pianist brought something unique to the same piece. She absorbed everything she could, practicing what she learned diligently and experimenting with her own interpretations. The combination of mentorship, exposure, and practice accelerated her growth, making her a young musician with remarkable depth and versatility. In one particularly memorable masterclass, she was asked to play a piece she had already mastered. The teacher challenged her to interpret it in a completely different style, emphasizing expression over precision. At first, she hesitated, unsure how to approach it. But as she played, she began to feel the music differently, discovering subtleties in phrasing and emotion she had never noticed before. The mentor smiled, impressed by her ability to adapt and convey new feelings through her playing. This experience taught her that music was not just about playing notes correctly, but about communicating with listeners and expressing the soul of the piece. Her growth was not limited to performance. She continued to compose, creating melodies that reflected her experiences, feelings, and imagination. Her compositions became more sophisticated, incorporating harmony, rhythm, and structure in ways that conveyed emotion and told stories. She shared her music with her mentors and teachers, who offered guidance and encouragement, helping her refine her work. Through composing, she developed a deeper understanding of music theory and the creative process, realizing that her gift extended beyond performing to creating something entirely new. Despite her growing fame and skill, she remained grounded. She continued to practice daily, exploring new pieces, refining her technique, and composing original music. She maintained the same curiosity and joy that had first drawn her to the piano, understanding that growth required both discipline and passion. Her teachers admired her focus and humility, knowing that these qualities would carry her far in her musical journey. One day, a regional music competition was announced. The piece she had struggled with months ago, the one considered impossible for many students, was part of the program. She knew this would be a test not just of her skill but of her confidence and poise under pressure. She practiced relentlessly, refining every phrase, perfecting her timing, and adding her own expressive touches. She approached the challenge with determination, knowing that this was an opportunity to demonstrate not only her technical ability but her emotional understanding of the music. When the day of the competition arrived, she stood backstage, listening to other performers and feeling the excitement in the air. The moment she stepped onto the stage, nerves surged through her, but she reminded herself of all the practice, guidance, and experience that had brought her to this point. As she sat at the piano, the audience watching, she felt a calm focus settle over her. She began to play, and the music flowed effortlessly. Every note, every phrase, conveyed her understanding and emotion, capturing the attention of everyone listening. Judges and audience members alike were amazed by her performance, noting not just technical skill but depth of expression that far exceeded her age. After she finished, there was a pause, and then the applause erupted. Her teachers and parents were overjoyed, and she felt a quiet pride in her accomplishment. She knew this was a milestone, a recognition of her growth, but also a reminder that her journey was ongoing. There would always be new challenges, more complex pieces to learn, and more opportunities to explore her gift. She had learned that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, passion, and guidance were equally important in reaching her potential. Following the competition, she began receiving invitations to perform at special events and concerts. Each opportunity was both exciting and challenging, giving her the chance to share her music with wider audiences and gain new experiences. She approached each performance with the same focus and humility, understanding that every experience contributed to her growth. Her mentors continued to guide her, helping her refine her technique and interpret music with greater depth. She also continued to compose, using her experiences to inspire new melodies and harmonies. Through all these experiences, her teachers realized that she was not just a talented pianist, but a true prodigy. Her ability to master difficult pieces, express emotion through music, and create her own compositions demonstrated an extraordinary combination of skill, creativity, and understanding. They knew that with continued guidance and dedication, she could achieve even greater accomplishments in the future. But more importantly, they recognized her love for music, the joy and curiosity that had fueled her journey from the very beginning. Her parents were equally proud. They had witnessed her growth from a quiet girl who loved to explore melodies on the piano to a young musician with confidence, skill, and emotional depth. They understood that her gift was rare and precious, and they supported her in every way, providing encouragement, guidance, and opportunities to grow. They also cherished her humility and dedication, qualities that would ensure her success in both music and life. By the end of this period in her life, she had become a young pianist with remarkable abilities, ready to take on even greater challenges. Her teachers and mentors saw her potential clearly, recognizing that she was capable of achieving extraordinary things. She had learned the value of hard work, dedication, and creativity, and she continued to explore the limitless possibilities of music. The journey that had begun with curiosity and love for the piano had transformed her into a true prodigy, one whose talent and passion would inspire and captivate everyone who heard her play. She looked at her piano, feeling gratitude and excitement. There were still countless pieces to learn, new techniques to master, and compositions to create. Each day offered an opportunity to grow, to discover, and to express herself. She knew that her journey was just beginning, and with her determination and love for music, there was no limit to what she could achieve. The impossible challenges of the past had become stepping stones, leading her toward a future filled with music, creativity, and extraordinary possibilities. As her reputation grew, invitations to perform at more prestigious events began to arrive. Each new opportunity felt like both a challenge and a reward. She knew that audiences expected more than just technical skill. They wanted emotion, expression, and artistry. Every performance became a chance to show not just how well she could play but how deeply she could communicate through music. The piano had become a bridge between her inner world and the hearts of those listening, and she relished the connection it allowed. One day, she was invited to perform at a regional music festival. The stage was grand, and the audience was larger than any she had faced before. As she approached the piano, she felt the familiar surge of nerves, but also excitement. Her hands hovered over the keys, and for a moment, everything else faded. The music flowed through her, guided by months of practice, lessons, and performances. Every note carried intention, every phrase told a story. The audience sat in rapt attention, drawn into the world she created with sound. As she played, the teachers in the audience exchanged astonished looks. They had witnessed her growth, seen her dedication, and understood her potential, but her performance surpassed all expectations. She had not only mastered the technical aspects of the piece but imbued it with emotion that resonated deeply with everyone listening. Some leaned forward, captivated by the subtle nuances and delicate phrasing, while others were visibly moved by the power and intensity of her interpretation. It was clear that she had become more than a talented student. She was a true artist. After the festival, she received letters of praise and encouragement from musicians and teachers who had been impressed by her performance. She smiled quietly as she read them, feeling proud but not boastful. She knew that each note she played, each piece she learned, was a step in a lifelong journey. Music was not about fame or recognition. It was about growth, discovery, and expression. She continued to practice diligently, exploring new pieces, perfecting techniques, and finding her own voice within the compositions she played. Her parents watched her with pride, remembering the quiet child who had first discovered the piano and the endless hours she spent experimenting with melodies. They could see how her dedication, discipline, and passion had shaped her into a young musician with both skill and soul. They also noticed her humility, her ability to remain grounded despite the praise and recognition. Music had become her way of understanding herself and the world, and it had given her confidence, joy, and purpose. Her teachers continued to challenge her, presenting more advanced compositions and encouraging her to explore diverse styles. She tackled pieces from different periods, from classical sonatas to romantic works and modern compositions. Each style required new techniques, interpretations, and approaches, and she embraced every challenge with enthusiasm. She discovered that each piece told a different story, and it was her responsibility to bring that story to life. This understanding deepened her appreciation for music and strengthened her ability to communicate emotion through performance. Beyond performance, she continued to compose. Her original pieces became more sophisticated, combining elements she had learned from studying great pianists and composers. She experimented with harmonies, rhythms, and textures, finding ways to convey feelings and narratives through her music. Her teachers and mentors guided her in refining her compositions, but the ideas and inspiration came from within. Creating music became a personal journey, a way to explore her thoughts, experiences, and imagination. Through composing, she learned not just to play music, but to create it from her heart. As she matured, she also began mentoring younger students. She shared her knowledge, experience, and love for the piano with those who were just beginning their musical journey. She taught them not only techniques and pieces, but also the importance of practice, patience, and passion. Her guidance was gentle and encouraging, reflecting the support and mentorship she had received. Watching her students improve under her care gave her a sense of fulfillment and joy, reminding her of the importance of nurturing talent and sharing the gift of music. The recognition of her talent grew beyond her school and local community. Invitations came to perform at national events, workshops, and concerts. She faced larger audiences, new challenges, and higher expectations, but she approached each opportunity with focus and excitement. She continued to practice diligently, knowing that preparation and dedication were key to delivering performances that were both technically precise and emotionally compelling. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It was the combination of skill, hard work, and a deep connection to the music that allowed her to shine. One particularly memorable concert was at a prestigious hall where she was to perform several advanced pieces, including the one that had once seemed impossible. As she sat at the grand piano, she reflected on how far she had come. What had once been a daunting challenge was now an opportunity to demonstrate her growth and mastery. She played with confidence, her fingers moving with precision, her expression conveying every emotion embedded in the music. The audience was captivated, and when she finished, the applause was overwhelming. But more than the recognition, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. She had transformed the impossible into an achievement born of dedication and love for her art. Following the concert, she continued to expand her horizons. She studied new techniques, explored different genres, and collaborated with other musicians. She began to experiment with improvisation, learning to create music spontaneously while maintaining structure and expression. This newfound freedom allowed her to explore her creativity in ways she had not before. Improvisation became a way to communicate her immediate emotions, to connect with the audience in a live, dynamic way. It added another layer to her artistry and reinforced her understanding of music as a living, breathing form of expression. Through all of this, she never lost sight of the joy that had first drawn her to the piano. Even amid competitions, performances, and advanced lessons, she still found time to sit quietly at home, exploring melodies and experimenting with sounds. She remembered the child who had first pressed the keys out of curiosity, and she cherished that sense of wonder. Music remained a source of happiness, discovery, and connection, and it continued to shape her character, teaching patience, resilience, and empathy. Her teachers and mentors reflected on her journey with admiration. They had witnessed a transformation from a young student with promise to a prodigy with extraordinary skill, creativity, and emotional depth. They recognized that her success was not just the result of innate talent, but also of her dedication, perseverance, and love for music. She had grown into a musician who could not only perform brilliantly but also interpret, create, and inspire. Her journey served as a reminder of how nurturing talent, combined with passion and hard work, could reveal extraordinary potential. Her parents also recognized the remarkable person she had become. They saw how music had given her confidence, focus, and resilience. They watched as she inspired others with her talent, both through performance and mentorship. They were proud not only of her skill but also of her humility, curiosity, and dedication. Music had become her path, shaping her life and future in ways they could hardly have imagined when she first sat at the piano as a small child. By the end of this period, she had achieved a level of mastery and recognition that few could imagine at her age. Yet, she remained grounded, focused on growth and expression rather than accolades. She continued to challenge herself, learn, and explore new horizons in music. Her journey was ongoing, with each performance, composition, and lesson adding depth to her skill and understanding. She understood that the path of a musician was never truly complete, and she embraced the lifelong journey of discovery, creativity, and expression. She looked at her piano, feeling gratitude and anticipation for what lay ahead. There were still countless pieces to learn, compositions to create, and audiences to move with her music. The impossible challenges of the past had become milestones, guiding her toward ever greater achievements. With her dedication, passion, and love for the piano, she knew that the future held limitless possibilities. Her journey as a piano prodigy was far from over, but she faced it with confidence, curiosity, and joy, ready to continue exploring the beauty and power of music.